Hey everyone, we've been taking a look at Baroque art in France, and I wanted to continue that discussion by examining the Versailles Palace today. And this becomes the main economic and cultural hub of Europe during the 17th century. And I want to examine some of the major developments that are happening there at the time. Mainly what we see, the main reason that France becomes this economic and cultural center is because of their king, Louis XIV, who is also known as the Sun King. And he developed this, what is known as absolutism, in the late part of the 17th and into the early 18th century, what is known as absolutism. And this is a form of government where all control is given to a single ruler. And so he becomes the judge. He becomes the one that's creating the laws, the legislation. He becomes the one enforcing them, the executive branch. Everything is directed towards him, right? And this is a famous phrase that he uttered that was perpetuated throughout his era. He says, "L'État, c'est moi," right? The state, that's me. I am the state. And so he suggests everything that should go through the state, any type of taxes or imports should go across his desk. He should have control over everything. And even further, any type of money enacted, any type of culture, it's all for him. He is the state, and it's all for his glorification. And France should be thankful for him being able to have this kind of life of luxury, because him being the wealthiest king in the world at the time meant that France was good, doing good times, and it meant good for all the French citizens. And so if you're French, you could be proud that your king is so wealthy and prosperous, right? That was kind of the mindset. And here you see him with the golden flowers, right, that demonstrate the French kind of crest that demonstrate his royalty. And then just to kind of juxtapose Van Dyck and his Charles I at Hunt versus Louis XIV, we see two different leaders and their means of seeing themselves and their kind of means of ruling as well, where Louis XIV focuses on opulence and grandeur. Charles I was much more humble and modest. And I think that kind of is representative of the Protestant areas in Europe, where they become much more about restraint rather than excess. But what we see in France, which is a Catholic country, the idea of thrift and the idea of excess, right? Being cautious of excess doesn't really apply to them. And so we see them having much more about demonstrating their wealth and excess. And so part of the Baroque era is about this kind of restrainment, about just kind of depicting ordinary average people. Franz Hals depicts the gypsy girl. Caravaggio depicts the young boy. We see with Bernini doing a bust of an average common lady. And we see similar ideas kind of moving northward into Flanders and more specifically Holland, where they start just looking at common everyday events. And so that's a big part of Baroque, is kind of focusing on those minute details of daily life and finding new meaning, new understanding, new insights, right? Bringing the ordinary into the extraordinary. What we see happening in France is another side of that, where we see much more focus on just being ornate and elaborate and excessive. And so that's another part of the Baroque era. Mainly I wanted to focus on Versailles Palace, which initially was just a hunting lodge that was built, and it was just outside of Paris, not very far from Paris, but it was a way for the king to escape and have, go out and hunt and just kind of get away from the politics. And what Louis XIV decided to do is he wanted to expand this to make it much more a palace fit for the best king in England. And so he embarks on this massive renovation campaign, expansion campaign, to create the grandeur of the Versailles Palace, right? And so he had a special interest in funding arts, and the society was known for how good their art was, right? Florence made a name for itself by funding the great Renaissance artists, and Louis the 14th, wanting to make a name for himself, knew that in order to create a legacy, you need to have art that's going to live beyond your reign. And so he had a particular interest in funding arts to make sure that his legacy was well received and well known. And so he opened the Academy of Art to promote painting, architecture, and sculpture. And the whole idea was he wanted to build up his culture to rival that of Italy. And so he paid countless funds acquiring, obtaining Italian art for artists to replicate. He sent students down there who won the admission to the King's Academy. They would go down to Italy and study for 5 years, and they would have to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and they would study, trying to replicate and mirror what the Italian greats were doing until 10 o'clock at night. They were trained in copying and imitating the classical Roman sculptures, and they were to imitate the Italian art, right? That was their models. And they were supposed to, think about this as an artist, they were supposed to produce a masterpiece every 3 months. And so the expectations were extremely high. But all of this was done to glorify the King of France. All this was done for just making a name for himself. And he, because of his massive funding campaign and his development of the Academy of Arts, he became this is a quote from Will Durant, he says, he became the greatest patron of art that history had ever known. So he far surpassed the Medicis and what the Medicis were doing in the Italian Renaissance. He wants to fund art, but mainly the centerpiece is Versailles.
Versailles is the palace other palaces were modeled after. The one many tried to outdo, but none succeeded. This ultimate royal palace is all about this man, the ultimate divine monarch, Louis XIV. He spent about half of France's entire annual GNP to turn his dad's hunting lodge into a palace suitable for Europe's King of Kings. The chateau started small, just the middle stretch of this grand facade. That was the hunting lodge where little Louis spent his happiest boyhood years. Once king, the massive expansion began. While today's crowds are tourists, 300 years ago this courtyard was a very different scene. The palace hosted nobles, thousands of nobles, each with an entourage. They'd buzz around from games to parties to amorous rendezvous in their sedan share taxis. Imagine servants scurrying about, delivering secret messages and roast legs of lamb. And it's crowded to this day. Smart travelers avoid weekends, come late in the day, and use a museum pass to skip the ticket line. The Palace of Versailles was the residence of the king and the seat of France's government for 100 years. It's a long series of lavish rooms, each with its own theme and with every inch sumptuously decorated. In the late 1600s, Louis XIV, shown here with his capable hand literally on the rudder of state, was creating the first modern centralized government. And in order to personally control as much as possible, he gathered everything here. United under a strong king, with the continent's biggest population, a booming economy, and a powerful military, France under Louis was Europe's superpower. Around the year 1700, Versailles was the cultural heartbeat of Europe, and French culture was at its zenith. Throughout Europe, when you said the king, you were referring to the French king, Louis XIV. French was the lingua franca. France was in vogue. You name it. Clothes, hairstyles, music, theater, table manners, French taste spread across the continent. Louis was a true Renaissance man, a century after the Renaissance, an accomplished musician, dancer, horseman, statesman, art lover. He called himself the Sun King because he gave life and warmth to all he touched. He was symbolized by Apollo, the Greek god of the sun. Versailles was designed to be the personal temple of this god on earth, decorated with statues and symbols of Apollo, of the sun, and of Louis himself. The classical themes throughout the palace underlined the divine right of France's kings and queens to rule without limit. Here, Louis is shown with his entire royal family, all depicted as gods on earth, ordained to rule without question. Versailles celebrated man rather than God by elevating Louis XIV to almost godlike status. Louis was a hands-on king. He ruled for about 70 years and was the perfect embodiment of the absolute monarch. Louis summed it up best himself with his famous rhyme, "L'État, c'est moi." The state, that's me. Pleasure ruled at Versailles. The main suppers, balls, and receptions were held in this room. The ceiling is like a sunroof opening up to heaven, filled with action parallel to the action right here in Louis's court. The style is pure Baroque, which lends itself to propaganda art, a riot of exuberant figures. The Venus Room is a reminder that love ruled at Versailles. Here couples would cavort, blessed from above by the goddess of love. As if to encourage the fun, Venus sends down a canopy of garlands to ensnare mortals in delicious amour. Louis invited the nobility to Versailles to control or domesticate them. The domesticated aristocracy lived lives of almost enforced idleness. Games were part of Louis's political strategy. By distracting his nobles with billiards, gambling, and dancing, Louis was free to run the country. The good life was addictive, and under Louis, the blue bloods were hooked. This was Louis's ceremonial bedroom. His daily life was a series of symbolic rituals. For example, while he'd actually sleep elsewhere, right here, the Sun King would rise and set with the sun each day. Once mighty, now domesticated, dukes and barons actually competed to see who would hold the candle while Louis slipped into his royal jammies. Bedtime, wake-up, meals, it was all public ritual. The royal bedroom faced the rising sun. It was the center of the palace and the center of France. When you understand the themes of the palace's many rooms, a stroll through Versailles is a stroll through French history. The War Room reminds us that Louis had Europe's leading army, and his reign came with lots of expensive wars. Louis ruled from 1643 to 1715. By the end, he was tired of fighting. Here in the Peace Room, peace is granted to Germany, Holland, and Spain as cupids play with discarded weapons and swords are pounded into violins. Louis bestows an olive branch on Europe as his queen cradles their baby twin daughters. At the end of his long reign, Louis, having exhausted France with his many wars, gave this advice to his great-grandson, the next Louis: be a peaceful king. The Hall of Mirrors was the highlight of the palace. No one had ever seen anything like it. Mirrors were a great luxury at the time, and this long hall was astounding. Imagine this place lit by the flames of thousands of candles, filled with elegant guests in fine silks, wigs, and fake moles as they danced to the orchestra. Under gilded candelabra and amid busts of Roman emperors, servants would glide by with silver trays of hors d'oeuvres. And from the palace, guests would gaze awestruck at Louis's amazing gardens.
A very different aesthetic for the Baroque art, very different take on it that we see happening in France, where it's not about restraint, it's not about sobriety, it's about excess, it's about having as much as you can to glorify the king. This is just the gate that, and as you enter into Versailles, this is the gate that you'll see, and notice at the very top of the gate, this kind of golden gate is the sun, right? So demonstrating the Sun King and then the crown on top, and then each side bears the sun, right? Just to remind you, if you weren't aware of where you were and who was in charge, this is to remind you of the Sun King. And so as you enter into Versailles or go to town, you kind of go through the train station, you hang a left, and then you walk to the end of the street, and then you'll be greeted with this gilded gate here. And this is me and my wife and a couple other faculty on campus as we went on a tour a few years ago. This is the very center. So this was originally where the hunting lodge was, and then he expanded beyond the different wings. And this is how vast this particular palace is. 551,218 square feet. That's just the palace alone, right? And just to put that in context, I think the average home in the United States is about 2,500 square feet. So, putting that in context, this is, about 500 or so times more larger than the average home in the U.S. 5,000 aristocrats could stay on the grounds at one time, and so in a lot of ways, this was a hotel. As Rick Steves kind of points out, that this is a way to domesticate the royals, to keep them busy while he runs the state. It took 14,000 servants to be able to run this palace, or kind of this palatial hotel. It has 2,000 windows. Think about cleaning all of those. 700 rooms, 1,250 fireplaces, and it's on 1,800 acres, which is about almost 3 square miles, right? So this thing is huge. This is the back side of it, right? So entering into the gates here, and then going through it, then you go to the backside, and then you see the gardens. But you can see that there's a lot of reflecting pools, and then there are sculptures around them. And so he's funding the artists to be able to create works of art that he can then display for the aristocracy, to demonstrate his wealth and his success. And this is just an aerial view, and so this is the fence that you walk through, right? So the gilded fence. This is the downtown area that you walk through, and then walk all the way down, go through the fence, and then you go into. You wait in a long line generally, and then you enter the palace here. And then right about here, there is a cathedral inside it. So he had his own church built inside the cathedral, because who wants to go all the way to church? You might as well just go downstairs and take mass. And so he kind of makes it all about being convenient. And then there's the rooms on either side. And in the back, you have just elaborate gardens that you can just get lost in. And so it's really fun to go to the palace itself and just kind of walk around and see all of the gold and the paintings and everything, all of the art that fills it. Just every single room is just decorated fully to the utmost. But what's really fun for me is to just kind of go around here and just get lost in all of the gardens around. So it's kind of a super cool place to visit. This is just another view from the back, and so this just gives you a sense of one of the many gardens that are around here. And this again is just one small part of it. This is one small part of the wing, and so this is just the tail end of one side of it. And then over in here in the springtime, they import orange and lemon trees into the area, and then they grow them there. And they still do this to this day, just to keep the tradition of what Louis XIV started. And they call it the l'orangerie, the citrus orchard. And then they could have citrus fruit and oranges. And so the idea is to bring the exotic here. So everything was about being exotic and making it exotic. Then he also wanted to add a moat that you see here. So this is just, again, this is the front side of it. These are some of the gardens. This is the garden I just showed you a picture of. And there's more gardens around here, and then more gardens around here that you can kind of get lost in. And then down here you can go on a moat. And the moat is about half a mile long. And then there's like a little crossing section here. And the focus for Louis XIV was he wanted to have something like they have in Venice, right? They have canals in Venice, and so, but you don't want to go all the way to Venice to be able to have that when you can have it in your backyard. And so he dug this out. He engineered, or had an engineer design this, and so you can go out and if you're a member of the aristocracy, you can go out and enjoy a canal just like you would in Italy. Today, you can rent a boat, and you can go out and do it. And this is just another representation, another image of that. And then this is me and my wife. We went out there and went all the way to the end. And let me tell you, my arms were completely dead by the time I got to the end of the moat. It's pretty huge. And then this is just inside, right? So each is decorated to a specific theme. This would be the billiards room. Again, the idea of games and entertainment to kind of wow the minds of the aristocrats. This is the Queen's chamber. The King and Queen didn't sleep in the same room for various reasons, which I won't discuss. But This just gives you a sense of, this is where Marie Antoinette had her bedchamber, and so we'll talk about the French Revolution in an upcoming lecture, and we'll talk about how they stormed the castle, and this is the room that they were looking for. And then this was Louis the 14th's bedroom, and then also Louis the 15th and Louis the 16th bedroom as well. And you can see, I mean, as you go to Versailles, I mean, it's shoulder to shoulder throughout the entire thing. And it takes you at least, several hours to be able to go through the entirety of the palace. Part of it is because you're going so slow because it's so packed. And then this is just another room demonstrating, everything was decorated, not just the painting, not just sculptures, but vases and chairs and tables. Everything was to be decorated to a very specific aesthetic, right? This is the Hall of Mirrors. Rick Steves talks about this one towards the end. This is me at the very bottom entering into it. But again, it shows you how, this is one of the most, sought after tourist destinations in the world. So it's going to be heavily packed. I wasn't able to take this photo. I just found this photo online because when I went there, it was extremely busy. But it gives you the sense of the Hall of Mirrors. And so on one side, you have windows, these large windows allowing the light to come in. And then on the other side, you have the mirrors that's reflecting the light. It is said, right, that people generally, he would have a certain time set aside in the late afternoon where people could come and ask for favors for him. And you can kind of see the throne here. Now, as you're walking through this, at the end of the day, the sun is setting. It's reflecting through the windows on past the mirrors. And then, so you have the sun on both sides, right? You have this light just kind of entering into the light. It feels as though you're entering into the presence of deity, right? And the idea is, if you are completely blinded by the light and you're kind of in awe of the grandeur, you're probably going to ask for a lot less, right? But this is another major aspect of the Baroque, is how extreme it is in terms of how elaborate, how ornate, right, it can become, right? So it's about being excessive, right? Not necessarily in Holland when they're influenced by Calvinist ideas. It's about restrained excess. You have the fur trader who's trying to show his wealth, but do so in a very restrained sort of way. So it's kind of along those lines. This is just not even trying to be restrained anymore. This is just showing how elaborate you can be. And then because the palace got so overrun, that's a bad word, maybe, it was so busy with aristocrats, he needed a place away from Versailles. So he built this, the Grand Trianon Palace, and this is on Versailles grounds. It is about, trying to think where it was, it's over in this area, and so it's still on the grounds, but it's just away. And so this is just kind of his secret getaway, just to kind of show you another image of it. This is the interior of it, so it's still elaborately decorated to give you a sense of the size and scale. But this was his retreat and getaway from his retreat and getaway of the Versailles Palace. And then when Marie Antoinette came a little bit later, right, so we're kind of jumping ahead in the story, but since we're talking about Versailles, I wanted to just address this just quickly. She came from Austria, and she missed her homeland as she comes into this foreign land of France. And so she had this built to resemble the Austrian cottages of her homeland. And so this is also on the grounds of Versailles, and you can also tour this one as well if you have the time. And this will give you kind of a sense. It's kind of like Disney World, though. It's kind of like they built this to look like something somewhere else, and it's built there to be kind of an escape on the grounds of Versailles. But it's super interesting. It's kind of cool that it's just randomly there. You're just walking through the gardens, and then boom, you have Marie Antoinette's escape as she's trying to get away from all the pressures of reigning as the queen. And so both the king and the queen had their own escape places that they can just go and get away to themselves. Today you can go and tour both of them. And so if you're going to tour Versailles, I would give yourself about a day or so just to spend on just in the palace and on the grounds themselves, because the grounds are super fun. You can also rent a bike, and you can go all the way around the grounds and just kind of go crazy. And then over right in here, just outside of Versailles Palace, is the new temple that's been built. That was built a couple of years ago, and so it was pretty close, right? The Paris temple is actually built in Versailles, and so but you can kind of go see both of them. It's super cool. Oh, this one, I just wanted to show you this kind of a thought to think about in terms of the Versailles Palace is whether or not this kind of elaborate display of wealth was a good thing or not, right? And so we think about the arts. Most of you are artists looking for, something like this, working for the state and working for, a very prominent person, paying well. I think that's what a lot of us would aspire to want. But at the other side of this, right, he's spending half of the GDP of France on the arts. And so the question is, that's great to employ so many artists and have such an emphasis on culture. I wish we had that in the United States. I think too often in the United States we are influenced by Calvinist principles of thrift and not having excess. And I think in a way that's kind of a good element, that we're not wasteful, or we are to a certain extent, but at least we try to be a little bit more careful with our resources. Some can argue there might be some problems with that kind of demarcation, but we're pretty careful with our resources in terms of culture, I suppose. But maybe we're that to our fault too, that we don't have enough art, we don't have enough culture. And so, maybe we need to find a greater balance. And so I wanted to show you this one. This one comes from what's known as the American Versailles. And so you have a very wealthy developer. He mainly sold timeshare condos, got a lot of money, and wanted to build the biggest house in the United States. And so very similar to what we see with King Louis the 14th. We see this happening, and this is more of a contemporary example. And I wanted to kind of put this within a contemporary lens to see how you would feel about this, right? So this is kind of King Louis XIV today. And I think in some ways, I'm very grateful for what Louis XIV did, because we can go and tour it now. But it also comes at a cost. It also comes at a price, right? So we have to also think about that in its complexity. So I just want to show you this. They did a documentary on, or a reality TV show on the development of Versailles. And I just wanted to show you just a couple clips from that.
Here we are. We're ready to share this with the world. My name is Jackie Siegel, and my husband is David Siegel.
I'm building the largest home in America.
It's now time to finish Versailles. I'm home. Oof, I think I'm going to ruin my shoes. I'd like to show you around a little bit.
If she wants something, she's going to go get it.
One statue is like $30,000. What do you think, Mochi? You like it? The house, it should be a little bit bigger, actually. We bought the land in 2000. A couple years later, we started construction. This house has taken me 20 years to build. And through the loss of a child, I value family more than ever. He's heard about our house, girls. Our kids are growing up. We want to live here as a family. Failure is not an option. We don't have much time left.
How many flamingos are you planning on getting at Versailles?
As many as I can get. There's so many chefs in the kitchen that you don't get the perfect recipe. Don't we have a Versace emblem?
Can't put these inside a house. Everything comes out. We have some issues.
I don't think we need to make it more complicated. Is the marble going to crack?
The water's dripping all your antiques.
Did you guys say grace? Grace. Okay. I don't know what I meant for it. This is one frickin' mess up.
So the TV show kind of goes through their life as their struggles as they're trying to build this. And I just wanted to show you, this is the tour, and so it took them several years to be able to complete. They had a lot of stalls, delays, and whatnot. The economic downturn in 2008, 2009 definitely didn't help them. And then this is her tour of her palace.
Okay, we're going to do the express tour of Versailles if that's possible. This is a very, very exclusive tour that no one's seen ever. Our entry doors are about 18 feet tall. Our entry hall is bigger than most people's houses. It's a very old shoe. The grand ballroom. This is our beautiful Bogan Reef dome that took several years to build, all custom made. This is an idea of what our floor is going to be. And I'm going to use semi-precious stones, turquoise, rose quartz. We have our grand staircases here on both ends. And you got me, the Queen of Versailles. Excuse me for talking fast, but I mean, this is the largest home in America. This one is a gold elevator. Okay, going fast. This here is the movie theater. We're going to have a balcony. Oh wait, they took my balcony out. I guess, well, I have to put the balcony back in. Okay. Hey, welcome to the dining room. This is our commercial kitchen. I think we have like 10 kitchens, I'm not sure. Maybe we should go this way. Hey, Rick. I think I'm locked in. Rick? Rick? I shipped in a British tub. It's a real antique. I'm getting tired just looking at these walls. The kids all want to be involved in decorating their own rooms. Those are a lot of the kids' rooms. And we have another kids' room here. And this is just one of the children's rooms. This is actually Drew's room. So he's going to get to decorate this. I guess we have a little stage. Originally, this was for doing like puppet shows and stuff. And now the kids are teenagers. They don't care so much about puppet shows. So this is the living room. Drew's bedroom. These living work. This is also an area where I plan on maybe having an orchestra. This is the living room to my master bedroom. We have his and her closets. Here is one of my closets. So this closet here, I decided that it's too small, so I have another closet going down the elevator on another level. This is my husband's closet.
But anyway, it puts in context the Versailles Palace, not only how hard it would have been to complete and how massive an undertaking it would have been, but also the amount of excess in terms of resources in order to create this. And so we have to think about this in that perspective as well, right? As we think about the king and the great impact he's had on art and culture in France, we also have to think about the expense that it took towards the people who were actually paying for it, and whether they believed it was worth it. As we take a look at the American Versailles and kind of some of the interesting ideas that they have for their house and the kind of the gaudiness of it, that's kind of a Baroque kind of theme. We have, I think, as people from the United States, we take a look at this and we're like, that's a little excessive, right? That's a little bit much. And it's a drain on resources. Now, it's a little bit different in terms of King Louis the 14th, who's using the actual state funds to be able to fund this, and these individuals have their own private funds due to the businesses that they have undergone in real estate. Kind of a different. I mean, this is more of a private thing, but I think even though they're using their own private funds for this rather than state funds, I still think most people today would take a look at their excess and believe it's a little bit uncomfortable, right? And we have to think about maybe, we have some of those tensions starting to brew. And so even though we have this great, the great style that he has exemplified within his palace at Versailles, it also foreshadows some things to come, right? So I just wanted to throw that out there for some upcoming lectures, that there's some tension that might be brewing on the horizon in France as people start feeling taxed in more ways than one due to the elaborate nature of the royals. And so throwing that idea out there, right? So we have some great elements that we can look at today in terms of what they were able to accomplish, but it comes at a cost, right? And it's going to come at the cost of some royals, Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette, putting themselves in a very precarious situation. So I just want to throw that out there, but an example of French Baroque.